This is part 2 of Stories to Success.
Yeah, walk in the building like I.
Here I got someone even more closer to home and more personal to me, my brother Albert. Just a little bit about Albert here before we get into it. He's very disciplined, a very take action type of person to lead from the front. Everything he says he's gonna do, he does it, and he shows you that he's doing it. He's not just someone that talks about it. And just a little bit about him, he's working at a big gas corporation, making a little over 6 figures a month. I mean, not a month, a year, sorry. And he has his own YouTube channel, which we're wearing the shirts Men Are Needed here, in which, he's building communionship with men and bringing back that masculinity, leadership, accountability, God to men. And, he's building that business and brand there. So I'm gonna let Albert, go ahead and just say a couple things before we get started here. So go ahead.
Peace and power, family. Like you said, I'm just a man on my journey of becoming the highest possible version of myself. I think we're all striving for greatness as men, even though we sometimes don't want to acknowledge it. I think that remaining a man that is humble is important, especially nowadays. So I'm very thankful to have my brother step up and lead from the front lines, and it's very inspiring, and it's an amazing thing. And it's a blessing to see this in real time happening.
Yeah. Okay. So as I said, something that my brother is really good with is taking action. And I feel like, a lot of us as we're navigating life and trying to find our breakthrough and hit that breaking point, things we struggle with, it's numerous. It's too many to count, but the biggest thing that comes to mind is taking action. And I know I've struggled with that before. And like I said, he's really good with that. So we want to talk about, how taking action and not just saying or just thinking can help you find that breakthrough. So, I just want to start with, asking you, I mean, have you always been someone that just takes action?
I want to say that I'm always been that way. I'm like every other man. We can all get comfortable in the society because there's so many distractions that we're given. So I think there were times in my life to where, we all battle our own mind, we all battle our own self. So there's not always 100% of me wanting to take action. But I think growing up, what helped me was sports. So I think I'm a big advocate of sports just because when you're playing some type of sports, it teaches you the basics of discipline, and that's where taking action kicks in. So I would say as a child, it wasn't always pretty like that. I just wanted to just hang around and play video games all day. It wasn't until I really had my daughter till I realized how important becoming a man of your word is. And that's what I think the foundation of me taking action has really started really in real time. So I think, it's a muscle that you have to work. It's just like going to the gym. Most of us just don't start because a lot of us don't have parents that teach us. Unfortunately, if you come from the communities that we come from, we're not
Mm.
giving the keys to success. We're literally having to go through trial and error. So when you're having to go through a trial and error period, you learn what's right and what's wrong. I think one of the gifts for me that I have, as opposed to other, when we're talking about taking action, specifically is I'm able to watch other people and learn from their mistakes. So, growing up, I saw my older brothers, what they did. And I said, all right, they took action or they did not take action. And this is what happened. So I just put that in the back of my brain and I said, you know what? They didn't take action there. So let me try it and let me see what happens. And it's like a game of life, bro. You just you keep playing until you win. And I'm not
Mm.
100% there, but in terms of taking action, I'm building that for sure. And I think when we're in a process of becoming a better man, as you said, taking action is extremely important.
Mm. Mm. And like you said, I can second it. Sports help me build discipline. I think, like Tom Brady said, everyone should at some point play a sport. But I want to get into, obviously you're talking about, what kind of got you to that point. For anyone that's out there wondering, like, what is the true importance of taking action? What would you say is the importance of taking action? How important is it?
Well, as a man, it's probably one of the most important things along with God. God says that you have to move. When you say move, faith without works is dead. So basically what that means is you can have faith, but that without the action part, which is the works, there's nothing to be manifested on this reality. So I would say that's really high on the priority list. Unfortunately, like I said, the reality is that majority of men don't want to do that because it's a difficult thing to do, because that means that you have to do things that are uncomfortable and when you don't feel like it. And I think a lot of us as men, we're moving too much in our emotions. Once we learn how to balance those, because I'm not saying that you can't be emotional to a certain extent, because we're all going to feel good some days and some days we're going to feel bad, but you have to still take execution on those days to where you don't want to. And I think that's where the battle begins. So when we're talking about the importance, it's really extremely high. And I don't think a lot of men, I think they acknowledge it, but they don't want to really comprehend it in full totality because they want to just ignore it. That's why they say that the saying is ignorance is bliss. If you just ignore it, you're not
Mm,
really worried about it. But when you start realizing that I'm not taking action here, my finances are messed up, I'm not getting any women, my body's not on point, my mindset's not on point, then you start feeling like a failure. And the moment you start feeling like a failure, you start running away from purpose. And then it's just a cascade of events that lead up to you not becoming the highest possible version of a man that you can become.
Yeah, and I like that you said purpose there because, I feel like when I was in a slump and, when I was struggling and what kind of helped me get through and is helping me right now is like you said, when you take action and you start getting in that habit of taking action, you start feeling more purposeful. And as I've been feeling more purposeful, it's been easier to get out of bed. It's been, easier to put in the work. It's been easier to go through the trials and tribulations. After I come from work, it's been a long, stressful day. I'm like, I got to make these videos and it doesn't feel anymore as if, oh, I got to push myself to make these videos. It's something I want to do. So I feel like taking action can definitely help you feel more purposeful and help you, get through those trials and tribulations there. Um, but the next point here is, we kind of talked about it a little bit, but how would you explain to someone what taking action looks like?
Well, like you said, I mean, to in the overall grand scheme of things, it's about having purpose. It's about having vision. It's about having a dream. It's about having imagination. So I believe it starts with a plan. First you have to have a clear, definite chief of aim. So where are we headed to? When you're on a boat, you don't just get in the boat and just go any which way. You gotta, and same thing with a plane. You
Mm,
have to have a set destination. So I believe you have to, see that leads you to another problem to where a lot of our minds are just clouded. So if you don't have any clear direction, you won't have a purpose, so you won't take action. So it starts with, I believe, getting some structure into your life. If you're having mental health issues, which a lot of people are, you have to start understanding that you have to bring some awareness into that situation. So what that means in real time is you start observing your thoughts. Why am I having these certain thoughts? Why don't I want to get out the bed? Why do I feel depressed right now? How come I'm not executing and becoming a better looking man, whatever that is? Looks maxing is a big thing right now. A lot of men can't get women, but they're not taking care of their looks. All these things compound. So if you're talking about the simple basics for men to just understand, first start with a plan. From that point, then you want to structure your day to where you're literally having blocks in your time. So when the moment you wake up, you want to write down your goals. You want to be in silence. You want to spend time to pray or meditate, whatever your preference is. But you have to be silent enough to understand why you are not in purpose or you are moving towards purpose. You're either being pulled in either direction. You have to realize which one you're being pulled into, though. And a lot of us as men, we don't realize that. So I think that's where it starts. So structure your day. That's how it should start.
Yeah, no, that's fire what you said because our coach JR, shout out Coach JR, used to always say at the 5:45 a.m. special teams meeting in college football is you're either getting better or you're getting worse. There's no in between. Every practice he said you're either getting better or you're getting worse. So I think that's a good point that whether you know it or not, you're taking action, but you're either taking action to get better or by you sleeping in by you eating horrible, by you skipping the gym today is taking action, but you're taking action to get worse today.
Right.
But some big things that you talk about on your page is obviously God, discipline, accountability. So how important is God when you're trying to take action? How important is, taking accountability and, having that discipline that you were just talking about?
Well, I believe that God is the foundation for it all, though, because a lot of us aren't going to be having a vision or purpose without that, which is why a lot of men are stuck right now, which is why a lot of men are numb right now. And if you, whatever God you believe in, and I'm not, that's the thing, a lot of people want to get caught up in the religion debate. I'm not in that. I just believe that you have to have a solid foundation in God, and that teaches you the core concepts of how to have an internal law. What I mean specifically is that you're having a moral, ethical guideline of what you're standing for. So when you know you stand for something, that means that I'm going to be accountable to show up on this podcast when my brother's telling me to show up. That means that I'm going to move in purpose because I know that this is building me closer to my vision that I have that God gave me. Now, a lot of times people say that they can't have a vision because they're not even close with God. But I don't believe that that's 100% true. I believe that you have to just first start getting some clarity. And that's the problem. Most of us don't have clarity nowadays. We're so distracted, we're so numb. And this world does a great job of detaching you from your spirit. So if you're not spiritual, you might not even understand some of the things that he's talking about on his channel. But the moment that you go outside and feel sun, you feel a fresh breath of air, and you start doing something that's goal oriented, you'll feel the purpose that we're referring to. And at that point, you have to become an accountable man. And responsibility is one of the difficult things because that is not always fun. And most time people want
Mm,
to have fun. We want to live in pleasure. And unfortunately, that's not the reality for us as men because you have to build your value up. And in order for you to build your value up, you have to be a man that can take action and that can align with God, I believe, because it's about your divinity and getting to a higher state of consciousness. And
mm,
consciousness sometimes just means that you're just elevating. Just I like to break it down now because sometimes you can get so caught up in the spirituality talks that it loses people. But for a broader scheme of things, we're just talking about elevating. That we're
mm,
literally talking about attaining the next level breakthrough, which is what your channel is based on. Because when you're talking about a breakthrough, what that looks like is not only your physical, which is the money, the looks, the status, but the spiritual, which is your mind, your
mm,
spirit, and your soul. So that's what we're talking about when we're referring to that.
mm. Absolutely, absolutely. And it kind of ties with everything that we've talked about and all the points here. But, just looking over there, just looking at Joe per se, and I'm looking at Joe, and Joe says he's going to do this, he's going to do that, or, Joe has these big aspirations, or, Joe has these goals, but Joe's not taking action. Why do you think a lot of people like this struggle with taking action? What do you think is really holding people back from going out and taking that action?
No, well, number one would be fear. Most people are living in fear because they're afraid of, and that's whatever their possibilities are. At some point in their life, they may have been trying to take action, and somebody told them that's stupid, that's dumb, their dream's not worth it, or they got their heart broken. And then, that ties into insecurities, that ties into self-doubt. So then they start doubting themselves, and then they get discouraged, and then you just live in your mind. So you're not living in getting out of that. And the only way to get out of your mind is to take action. So it's like a
Mm,
catch 22 because fear is the biggest one though. That's
mm,
it just stops you. Most people are afraid. You want to do it, but you can't do it because you feel like you're stuck. You literally feel like you have that monkey on your back. And
mm,
most people don't want to do that because they think, oh man, that person's going to judge me. That person's going to make fun of me. That person gonna think I'm dumb. He's thinking I'm stupid. Look at they're gonna clown me. So people want to just stay in that comfortable spot, but that's the reason why people never really attain their next level breakthrough because it's not pretty. I'll be honest. Like when we're talking about taking action, this can get real ugly because it's the day-to-day grind of it that makes it to where you're literally going to war with yourself. You're literally fighting your own demons. You're literally fighting yourself, and it's not fun. Most of us just want to live in fun. So when we're talking about, I think if that's that Joe that you're referring to, he's just living in fear. He's scared, and he knows that if he starts doing that, now I'm probably going to hold him accountable. People are going to hold him accountable. People don't want responsibility nowadays because it's difficult.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's for sure. And some other things just to add to that, like you said earlier, pleasure, comfort, people just being traumatized,
Hmm.
and like Jordan said on the last episode here, a lot of times unfortunately it's coming from people that are influential or close to you, like, maybe a family member's is, putting you down, putting your mindset down and make you think that you can't even do it here. But kind of to tie everything together, and again, it just loops back. But if you had to build a plan for someone and give someone a plan of, all right, here's a step by step, what it looks like, how to do it, take action, where would you start? And then once you get in that process of taking action, where do you go from there?
Well, I think, just to bring it back to what you just said, I think what you're referring to was the environment. I think that's
Mm,
important too. So if you're around
mm,
a toxic environment, you need to separate. And sometimes that's a lonely process. So
mm,
you have to get comfortable with being alone for a little while, even though you know it's not going to be easy. So first, like I
mm,
said, you have to get to a point to where you can be silent enough to get some clear direction. So
mm,
if we're talking about taking action and building something, that's dependent on what you can internally see within yourself. Because some people, like your vision might be different than my vision, but we still have something that we're given as far as a blueprint that we can unlock if we can spend the time to get to know ourselves. So it starts with knowing yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Write those down. When you start to evaluate what you're good at, you have to start taking action. So start implementing that. So a lot of times people right now are taking too much time studying things, learning things, you don't need more information nowadays. Once you learn
mm,
something, you take action immediately. So that's why I think people, if you learn something today, you do it tomorrow. So you don't give yourself enough time to sit there and overthink and overcomplicate. So once you learn, which I do think learning is important, people will overlook that. But if you have to learn, that's the basics of things too. So people don't want to learn things nowadays, which is why they don't take action. So you have to get knowledge, but then you have to execute when you get the knowledge. So depending on what you can see yourself doing, there are certain skills that are valuable right now. Communication, what you're doing, content creation, editing, and problem solving. I think if you could sit back, analyze for a second, you have to be able to think, and thinking means you have to be able to learn.
mm,
So read books, and there's a multitude of books that you could start with, but I think Think and Grow Rich is a basic foundation that every man should read, The Way of the
mm,
Superior Man. So you're getting all this knowledge, and then you're applying that knowledge, and that's the thing that I don't think a lot of men aren't doing because, like I said, it comes back to fear. So then you're breaking it down to applying it, and you're gonna fail. That's the thing. People gotta, bro. If you're not
mm,
trying and failing, you're not gonna win. You have to literally fail your way. But it's not a failure. You're literally seeing it as a learning lesson. But at
mm,
least you're understanding more about yourself. You're understanding your capabilities. You have to test things, and I think that's what younger men specifically they don't understand. They get stuck in one area and they think that's their area that they're going to be in the rest of their life. That's not true. You have to maybe try economics, and then maybe try studying business, and then you can study finances, and then you can study podcasting, and you can study communication. Try them all until you win. Literally,
mm,
that's what I did. I kept studying, 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 and just applying. But people will tell you naturally what you're gifted at when you start understanding things. And I think that's what it
mm,
starts down to. And then it's just a daily thing. At that point, once you get the vision, once you get a plan, once you have your goals clearly defined, you should be able to say in 1 year, for example, when I started my channel, I said in 1 year, I want to have 1,000 subscribers and have my channel monetized. So that's tangible. Now I'm working towards that. So it should be clearly defined. And then you're just doing a daily thing, repetitive, consistent actions. And this is the fun. I mean, this is not the fun part. People don't want to really be in that delayed gratification point, but that's where you have to be. That's where that success is.
Mm. And I'm glad you bring that up because just to give everyone, a real life example here, again, just to reiterate it, obviously Albert here has a brand, a monetized YouTube channel, MenAreNeeded555. You can check it out. But you have around 500,000 views, almost 2,000 subscribers. Just to give a real life example, how did you go about creating that? How did you take that action? What did it look like? Where did it start? How did this whole Men Are Needed come about?
Well, like I said, I mean, what with me specifically is I like to sit back and I analyze a lot. So I like to just take a second and observe things, which is basically a higher form of awareness. So I realized there's a problem in society, and we all know that there's a problem with men becoming men, with men
Mm,
not finding purpose, with men not taking action, with men not finding their breakthroughs. So I said, well, what is my natural gifts that I have? And one of my gifts is that I believe separates with me is I have a way to communicate as well as I'm spiritually in tune with things.
mm,
So then at that point, I said, well, that separates me alone because a lot of men will talk about things, but then they won't align with God. So they're not really moving with pure integrity.
mm,
And in my opinion, there's a lack of God in general. So that separates me, that puts me to rare in itself. So I said, at that point, I'm gonna test to see if this is what people want in the market, So the only thing that you could do at that point is test it, which is to take an action, which is what you're talking about. Until you actually put it out there, you won't know if you'll win or lose, but you have to do it. And so I can get down to like some of the basics of what you can believe in your mind because I think it does go beyond that you have to build confidence. And so a lot of men aren't having confidence now. So that doesn't make them want to do anything because they're feeling insecure. But you have to be confident enough in yourself to have self-respect. Once you have the self-respect, then yeah, you can go about that. So that's why I've been building this for a long time. And I want you guys to know if you're a younger guy, even an older guy, you have to be able to be happy with yourself, whatever that looks like, because
mm,
a lot of men aren't happy with yourself. So if you don't feel like you're happy with yourself, you're not going to want to do anything anyways. You're not going to want to take
mm,
action. So that's what I started to realize. I said, well, men aren't happy. Men don't have self-respect. Men can't get women. So I said, let me just test this. And I started testing it. But at that point, I understood that there's so much different competition in the market. And it's just like sports, to reference this again. If you're a high school player trying to get to D1, there's a lot of people trying to do that. And then if you're D1 trying to get to the NBA or the pro league, that's even a smaller number. So the only way to get to that point is to outwork everybody. And that's not the fun part, but you literally have to do things that people won't do. So for me, I was making daily content. I was breaking my videos up into shorts. I was constantly, any free time, I'm thinking about video ideas. I'm thinking about how to bring more value. I'm not worried about becoming overnight. They keep playing the short game. You got to play the long game, especially nowadays because there's so much content right now. There's so many people trying to become a millionaire, trying to become an entrepreneur. And if you can be that one rare person that can truly sit back and play the long game and have the delayed gratification, then no matter what, you'll be a success, even if you don't succeed immediately. Because this wasn't my first time creating a YouTube channel. I had a YouTube channel prior to this. So I technically, in terms of people, I didn't get that channel monetized. So this is my second time going around. And that's what I'm saying. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe even 7 times. You might think it takes a month. It's going to take you 5 years. But will
mm,
you still keep going? Will you
mm,
still keep persisting, even though you're not seeing any results? That's the
mm.
key.
Facts. And I just want to say to everyone out there, it's okay to fail. I know we get caught up, especially, people my age, younger, scrolling on social media, and all you see is the 1%. And you think you're supposed to win right away, your first try, your first shot. But the reality of it, for 99% of people is you're gonna take a lot of shots and miss a lot. You know, it's gonna take a lot of attempts and tries, just like you said, this is your second channel around. Now you gotta monetize. So I just want to reiterate, it's okay to fail. That's the reality. So if you tried something and you failed, just know you're hearing it from two real people here speaking that real, that it's okay to fail and that's the normal reality. You know, don't get caught up with the 1% of social media and thinking, oh, I took action and I failed, so now I'm gonna just sit down. It's not for me, you know?
Yeah, and a lot of people on social media, that's the thing. Like, I don't call too many people out, but they're just not real. They're just not showing the basics of it. And they make you think that you can just do it overnight and it's not
Mm,
authentic because that's not truly what happened. If you really study them, they just didn't show the process before that. They were putting in the hours too, or
mm,
somebody gave them a handout. But at the end of the
mm,
day, you still have to put in the work. You have to pay your dues. That's what it comes down
mm,
to. Like, you have to put in, you have to put it on the line. And most people right now, they're not ready to put it all on the line because it's uncomfortable. But if you're truly wanting to take yourself to the
mm,
next level and truly tap into greatness, it's gonna take you outworking the competition. It's gonna take you truly doing things that are gonna make you uncomfortable. But that's where discipline as a man, even as a woman, you have to be disciplined because there's so many different distractions that are getting thrown your way. But can you still stay locked in? That's the key. You have to ask yourself, and this is the question that I had to ask myself, and I still ask myself to this day, what am I willing to sacrifice to
mm,
get there? Because before I did this interview with you, I just got done making 3 videos and I just got home from work, and it's getting late at night and I still got to edit videos. And it's not like I just came home, hopped on Netflix, ate some
mm,
pizza. Sometimes it's literally you're just working and working and working. But if you really want to get out of this system and you really
mm,
want to get to a point to where you're becoming the highest version of yourself, this is what it takes.
mm. Absolutely, absolutely. And that's what this is all about is, becoming the highest version, highest frequency of yourself. Because, that's how we should be operating as a community, as people. But unfortunately, we all know the distractions, the devil, all these things like, social media and lust and greed and money has, dumbed us down. So that's why everyone balanced right now. But that's the whole point is, trying to find that next level breakthrough and not just get a breakthrough, but take it to the next level and become the highest version of yourself. But, if you listen to this in full, you've heard it. This is the real about taking action. What is taking action? What does it look like? How to take action? Why you need to take action? And the real behind it. So, I appreciate you speaking that real. I mean, that's all I got in the notes here. If you got any final remarks, go ahead.
Well, I
Let the
just
people know.
Well, I just wanted to say I think it's important for us to understand that the majority of us are going to have to still work a quote unquote 9 to 5 while we're building something of
Mm,
our own. And I think it's important for us to build things.
mm,
And that's what I'm saying. It comes down to using your imagination and using your creativity. How can you be creative? How can you tap into your unique gifts that you have?
mm,
That's the key because most of us, it's hard to go to your job and still try to do this at the same time. But if you can align those two, you have to be able to find something that you're really ready to sacrifice for, and that'll take you to the point to where you can take action and you can start to
mm,
begin to execute without being in a position to where you're around people that are, you have to be careful around the people that are influencing you too, because at the end of the day, everybody's influencing you and everybody's trying to gain your attention. And that's what we're at right now, where everybody's just trying to get your attention. They're really trying to
mm,
sell you something. So if you can build the skill to, I'm gonna not be a follower, I'm gonna be the leader, then you'll separate naturally. But to get to that point, it's gonna take a lot of looking within yourself. And once you can do that, then I think you're ready to get to the next level breakthrough and tap into your higher version of yourself.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's what it's about. That's what we're doing here is speaking that real, giving you the real of it. Like you said, a lot of people on here aren't authentic. And it's just not the reality that every day is a great day, life is perfect. A lot of us are coming from, generational curses, trauma. A lot of us have trials and tribulations, and a lot of us, we don't got it easy. So you got to find that breakthrough, and that's what I'm going through right now. And I know a lot of people younger than me and older than me are going through the same thing. So, that's what it's all about. Follow the page here, subscribe. Again, check out Men Are Needed 555. We're both building, and we're serving our purpose, which, that's the whole point of taking action is finding your purpose and fulfilling it.
Absolutely. It's all about building. It's all about consistency. It's all about the mindset. Like I said, I'm proud of you of what you're doing. And I think sometimes as men, we won't truly say that to other people because we might feel jealous or we might feel like we're not doing it, so we feel inadequate. But I
Mm,
think if we can unite, that will take us to a point to where we're truly making it easier on each other to build. So we're not gatekeeping. If I help you out, you help me out, we'll build together and we'll grow together because I think we all need somebody to support us in one form or another. So, like I said, this is important what you're doing, it's important what I'm doing. And as long as we continue to lock in, sky's the limit, if you can believe it. A lot of people don't want to even believe that
mm,
though. But like I said, it's not about that. It's about showing sometimes you have to lead by example. And what you're doing is
mm,
leading by example. What I'm doing is leading by example. And we're progressing. That's all that matters right now.
mm. Absolutely. And again, I appreciate you coming on here, speaking that real, taking your time out. And, like I said, that's what it's all about, finding that breakthrough, but taking it to the next level and becoming the best version, not just a better version, but the best version of yourself. So, again, subscribe, comment, stay tuned for the next episode. Look out soon for the next to come. And we're just going to stay on that grind.